Hey everyone, and welcome to a deep dive on the Book of James.
Yeah, this is a book that I think people maybe don't often spend a lot of time in.
It's tucked away in the back.
Yeah, tucked away in the back there.
But it's got some really great stuff in it.
It does.
You know, I've always kind of found James a bit intimidating. He's not afraid to tell you how it is.
No, he's not.
He's pretty blunt about it.
Well, he was Jesus' brother, so.
Oh yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
That's probably why.
He had seen it all.
So one of the things that really struck me at the beginning is his take on trials and temptations, and actually saying to consider it pure joy, you know, when we face these difficulties. And
yeah, pure joy.
I don't know about you, but like
that's a tough one, right?
That's really tough to swallow.
Well, and you know, this is a letter that he's writing to Jewish Christians who are scattered all over the Roman world, and they're being persecuted.
Right.
And so it's not making light of their suffering.
Right.
But it's saying you need to view this through a different lens. If you view this through the right lens, you can see the purpose in it, and you can even find joy in it.
So it's more about kind of shifting your perspective rather than like saying, oh, I'm so happy that I'm going through this terrible thing.
Yeah. I mean, who wants to go through a trial? Nobody wants to go through that. But if you can look at it and say, you know what, God is using this to shape me, to mold me, to make me more like his son.
Yeah.
Then that is where the joy can be found.
It's almost like an athlete training for something. You know, they're pushing their body to its absolute limits, and it's painful.
Right.
But it's for a purpose.
Absolutely. And they come out stronger.
Yeah.
They come out better.
And it's interesting, too, because he goes on to talk about how, you know, these trials produce perseverance.
Perseverance, right?
And, you know, that perseverance has work to do in us to produce character.
Character, and then ultimately hope.
Yeah.
That we would not give up.
Hope that won't disappoint us.
Right.
And so it's interesting because it's this progression, you know, that it's not just like, oh, I'm going through something terrible and I should be happy about it, but it's that there's a purpose for it.
There's a purpose for it.
And he really emphasizes, too, that this is not coming from God.
That's right.
You know, we're not being tempted by God.
Right.
But it's coming from our own desires.
Yeah, he uses this really vivid word picture. Yeah. Right. He talks about desire conceives and it gives birth to sin. And sin, when it's full grown, gives birth to death.
Wow.
And so he's really making it clear, like, don't play with sin.
Right.
Don't think that you can kind of dabble in it and come out unscathed.
Yeah, I've always been struck by that verse, too. It makes it sound like our desires are just innately bad.
Yeah.
But, I mean, we were created with those desires.
Sure. And I think what he's saying is that our desires left unchecked.
Okay.
Our desires, when we become a slave to those desires,
gotcha.
That's when they lead us to sin.
Yeah, okay. That makes a lot more sense.
And it's really a matter of the heart, right?
Yeah.
Where is your heart?
Where is your heart at?
Where is your heart at? Because out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks.
That's good. Yeah.
What Jesus said. And so if our heart is filled with good things, with godly things,
yeah,
then that's going to be reflected in our actions.
So there's that progression again,
yeah.
You know, from the inside out.
Absolutely.
It's not just behavior modification, but it's like really a heart transformation.
That's what James is getting at.
Yeah. So we face these trials, we're tempted by our own desires, but then he offers this amazing promise that we can ask God for wisdom.
Yeah.
To help us navigate these challenges.
Yeah. And that's really encouraging, right?
Yes.
I mean, if you are going through a trial,
yeah,
if you don't know which way to turn that, James says, ask God.
Yeah.
He's got the wisdom that you need.
He gives generously.
That's right.
And he doesn't rebuke us for asking.
Yeah, he's not going to turn you away.
But there is a catch.
There is a catch.
He says we have to ask in faith.
That's right.
Without doubting.
Without doubting. And then he gives us this word picture of someone who's like a wave of the sea.
Oh, yeah.
Driven and tossed by the wind.
It's like when you're trying to stand up on a surfboard for the first time and you just wipe out.
Yeah. That's a great illustration.
Yeah, you're just like flopping around.
You're unstable.
Yeah.
You don't have that solid foundation.
Yeah. And it's interesting too because you think about like a wave, it's very powerful.
Yeah.
But it's also very unpredictable.
Right. You never know which way it's going to go.
You don't know where it's going to take you.
That's right.
And so I think James is saying that, you know, if we're doubting, if we're double-minded.
Yeah.
Then we're going to be unstable.
We're not going to be able to stand firm.
We're not going to be able to stand firm when the trials come, when the temptations come.
We're going to be blown around by whatever's popular, whatever's going on around us.
We're not going to be able to stay rooted in truth.
That's right.
And so it's not just about knowing the right things.
Yeah.
But it's about having that deep, unwavering faith.
Yeah, it's about having that faith that anchors you.
Yeah.
that keeps you steady
That keeps you steady.
in the midst of the storm.
And it's interesting, too, because he goes on to talk about, the fleeting nature of wealth.
Yeah.
And he compares it to like a wildflower.
Right. It withers and fades.
It withers and fades.
And this is a culture where riches were seen as a sign of God's blessing.
Right.
Right. So this would have been pretty radical teaching for them to hear.
Yeah.
To say, you know what riches God see do? They can disappear in a moment.
Yeah.
Don't put your trust in them.
Yeah.
Put your trust in something that's going to last.
Put your trust in the eternal.
That's right.
Yeah. And it's so countercultural because today
Oh, yeah.
we're bombarded with messages about acquiring more stuff,
More and more.
more. And,
And James is like, no less is more.
yeah, he's saying like, focus on what really matters.
What really matters.
Where's your heart at?
And what's eternal.
Yeah. Are you storing up treasures in heaven? Or are you storing up treasures here on earth?
That's going to rust and decay.
That can be taken away in a moment.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. So I think that's a message we all need to hear.
Absolutely. Me too.
Myself included.
Me too.
It's so easy to get caught up in, the next thing, the next promotion, the next social media.
Yeah, the comparison game.
And we forget what truly matters.
Let's forget what truly matters.
And I think James is just calling us back to that.
Yeah, back to the basics, back to what's important.
Back to the basics.
Back to our relationship with God.
Yeah.
And loving Him and loving our neighbor.
And loving our neighbor as ourselves.
That's it.
And that's where true fulfillment is found.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. That's good stuff.
That's good stuff.
All right. Well, let's take a break, and when we come back, we'll dive into some more of the practical advice that James has to offer.
That's good.
It's funny, because we're talking about this, wealth and status and everything, and it makes me think about, how quick we are to judge others, who maybe have more than us or who seem to be living, a more glamorous life. But James has something to say about that too, right?
Yeah, he's got a lot to say about judging others. And actually, he kind of connects that with the danger of wealth. Like, it's almost like if you're so focused on material things, you're going to miss the bigger picture. And you're going to start looking down on people who don't share your priorities.
Right. Right. It's so easy to fall into that trap, comparing ourselves to others and, feeling either superior or envious or whatever.
Oh, we've all been there, right?
Yeah.
But James is calling us to something much different. He's calling us to humility.
Humility.
Yeah.
And he says, God opposes the proud, but shows favor to the humble. And that word opposes, it's pretty strong language.
Yeah, it's not just like, oh, God's kind of annoyed with the proud. It's like God's actively resisting the proud.
He's putting up a wall.
Yeah, it's a barrier between us and God.
So how do we cultivate humility then in a world that is constantly telling us to, promote ourselves and to strive for recognition and all of that?
That's a great question. And I think it starts with recognizing our own imperfections and limitations. We all mess up. We all fall short. We all need God's grace.
And I've always kind of struggled with that idea of submission to God. It feels so passive, like giving up control. But the way you're explaining it makes it sound more like aligning ourselves with God's will, which is actually incredibly empowering.
I think that's a great way to put it. Submission isn't about weakness. It's about recognizing that God has a better plan for our lives than we could ever come up with on our own.
It's like surrendering to a higher authority.
Yeah.
That has our best interests at heart.
Exactly. And when we do that, when we humble ourselves before God, it changes our perspective on everything. We become less judgmental of others, more compassionate. We're able to see people through God's eyes, recognizing their inherent worth and dignity.
Okay. Yeah, that makes so much more sense now. So we've talked about, trials, temptations, wisdom, wealth, humility, judging others. It feels like we're covering all the bases here.
James is pretty thorough.
He's like a machine gun of wisdom.
He is. He's like rapid fire wisdom here.
So what else does he have for us?
Well, he doesn't stop there. He goes on to give some very practical reminders about how to live out our faith in everyday life.
Okay, I'm ready. Give me the James version of a to-do list for authentic Christian living.
Okay, well, at the top of the list is patience. James reminds us that spiritual growth takes time. It's like a farmer waiting patiently for the harvest. We can't rush the process. We need to trust that God is working in us, even when we don't see immediate results.
I can really relate to that. I'm working on a product right now that feels like it's taking forever, and I'm getting so impatient. But James is reminding me to trust the timing, to keep showing up, and to let God do his work.
That's a great application. And speaking of things that take time and effort, James also emphasizes the importance of prayer. He tells us to pray in all circumstances, whether we're going through good times or bad times. Prayer is our lifeline to God, the way we communicate with Him and draw strength from Him.
It's so easy to let prayer slide when things are going well, but James is making it clear that, we need to be consistent. We need to make prayer a regular part of our lives.
Absolutely. And along with prayer, James highlights the power of confession. He urges us to confess our sins to one another and pray for each other. Now, this might sound a little uncomfortable at first, but there's incredible freedom and healing that comes from being honest and vulnerable with each other.
Yeah, I can see that it's about being authentic in our relationships, acknowledging our weaknesses, and allowing others to support us on our spiritual journey. It breaks down those walls of isolation and creates a sense of community.
Exactly. Jibs understands that we weren't meant to do this alone. We need each other. We need to be able to share our burdens, confess our struggles, and encourage one another along the way.
This is so good. It's like James has given us this comprehensive guidebook for living out our faith in a way that's real, practical, and transformative.
I think that's a great way to sum it up. He doesn't just want us to have head knowledge about God. He wants us to have heart transformation that leads to real life change.
And he's not afraid to tell us how to do it.
Nope, he's very direct.
That's James.
Yeah.
Man, there's so much good stuff here. It's hard to even keep track of it all.
Yeah, James really covers a lot of ground.
So we've talked about trials and temptations and wisdom and wealth and humility and judging others and patience and prayer and confession.
Yeah, and how all of those things are interconnected.
Yeah, is there anything else he throws our way? I feel like he's already given us like the entire playbook for the Christian life.
He pretty much has, but he does have a few more gems for us as we wrap things up.
All right, I'm ready.
So in chapter 5, he circles back to that theme of wealth, but this time with a much stronger warning about the dangers of hoarding riches and exploiting others.
Oh, wow. Okay, that sounds pretty intense.
He uses some really vivid imagery.
Yeah.
He talks about how the wages you fail to pay your workers are crying out against you, how your riches have rotted and your gold and silver have corroded.
That's powerful.
It's like he's saying, if your wealth has come at the expense of others, it's not a blessing, it's a curse.
It really makes you think about, where your stuff comes from.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's easy to kind of ignore the ethical implications of what we buy and consume.
We just want the latest gadget or the newest fashion.
Right. But James is calling us to a higher standard.
He is. He's saying we need to think about the impact our choices have on others.
So it's not about how much money you have, but how you use it.
Exactly. Are you using it to bless others, or are you using it to build your own little kingdom?
And that brings us back to that central theme of James.
Faith in action.
Faith in action. It's not enough to just say we believe.
Right. Our faith needs to be expressed in tangible ways.
Through our generosity, our compassion, our commitment to justice.
Yeah. Walking the walk.
Walking the walk, not just talking the talk. And then he ends with this beautiful reminder about the power of prayer and the importance of persevering through trials.
Yeah. Knowing that the Lord's return is near.
So it's like he's tying it all together.
Yeah.
We're called to live out our faith with patience and humility and integrity, trusting in God's grace and relying on his strength.
And remembering that we're not alone in this.
We have each other.
We have each other and we have God.
Who is always with us.
Always with us, ready to guide us, comfort us, and empower us to live lives that truly honor him.
Wow, this has been an amazing journey through the book of James.
It has.
I feel like I have a much deeper understanding of what he's trying to say and how it applies to my life.
That's great to hear, and remember, this is just the beginning.
Yeah.
Keep exploring the book of James. Let his words sink deep into your heart and allow them to transform the way you live.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the book of James. We hope you've been inspired and challenged to put his timeless wisdom into practice.
See you next time.
Until next time, keep seeking truth, keep living authentically, and keep making a difference in the world.